best water is primary water, which a lot of people, it's all over the world. This is a water planet. If you drill straight down, I don't care if you're in the middle of the desert, you're in California.
Yeah, you'll strike some good water down there.
The best water is primary water. The best. Everything else that they talk about, the rain coming from the rain or from the mountains, and okay, that would be
that's
like
fine.
primary.
You gotta wait till it gets 100 meters down, 150 meters.
Yeah, that's right. But that's the best water. That's artesian, pure water.
Feet.
That's what the Queen of England, that's what she has, okay? When she goes somewhere, she has another plane, just carries all the organic things. Yeah, this is how they live.
That's why we had a home.
Yeah.
It
right.
took a moment to pull that water up to surface, but once you filled half a liter metal, my grandfather's cup, and you drank that you were good.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And you couldn't drink it
artesian
continuously.
Well.
You
artesian
your
well.
brain.
That's correct. It's pure water. It's what we really should be drinking. You're right.
Anyways, so the issue of the S with the vertical bar, whether it's got one or two. Okay. Did you have a mortgage? Only a U.S. citizen can access bankster debt. Okay. So if you had a mortgage, then you didn't really own it. Matter of fact, mortgage, that's like a death pledge. Eh? Anyways, can the bail priest in the so-called court presume you're a U.S. citizen? This is, huh?
Is that why they wear black robes?
Yeah.
Because they're basically...
they are bail priests, okay? But they're bar members. That's the United Nations.
Yeah.
That's all Roman cult. That's the reason. It's a religious ceremony. Okay.
Yeah.
It's in, and I talk about it in my book.
Yeah.
Okay. Martial law is ecclesiastical law. That's where it comes from. Okay. Yeah. That's why they're wearing. It's a religious ceremony.
Right.
And so I've actually heard of people go into court and say, I don't choose to participate in your religious ceremony. They don't say satanic, but it is satanic.
Right.
I don't wish to participate in your religious ceremony.
Exactly.
And they'll say, get him out of here.
I don't want to deal with a BARF. You know what BARF is? British Accreditation Registry Fraudster.
Yeah, right. Anyways,
you added a word to it.
This is the Gold Reserve Act of 1934, located at 48 Stat 337. As used in this act, the term United States means government of the United States. The term currency of the United States means currency which is legal tender in the United States and includes United States notes and Federal Reserve notes. So, if you think about it, United States notes, Federal Reserve notes are meant for in the District of Columbia only. And when they're outside of there, then that's improper use.
Well, and territories, and we know how they got to get everything, all this, as their territory.
Exactly.
But that's what they do, just like the federal zone,
but
right?
But again, if there's a guy on my Yahoo group that he'll go into court and he'll say the judge is, as a counterclaim, he'll make it a counterclaim, and he'll say the judge hates the Constitution because of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, which says that the District of Columbia is 10 square miles only, over there between Virginia and Maryland. Okay, and here you're imposing me your D.C. law here. You see what I'm saying? That's exactly what they're doing.
Of course.
It's territorial.
And what's Columbia? People don't know the name Columbia.
Yeah.
God of Destruction.
What or who?
God of Destruction. Columbia. Columbia Pictures.
The question should be who is Columbia or was Columbia?
Yeah, that's correct.
I know who was Columbia.
Yeah.
I don't know what is Columbia.
Okay, so anyways, 12 U.S.C. 411, Federal Reserve notes to be issued at the discretion of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System for the purpose of making advances for the Federal Reserve banks through the Federal Reserve agents are hereinafter set forth and for no other purpose are authorized. So if you're not a bank, actually it gives them a right to presume that when you use Federal Reserve notes that you're a bank. Said notes shall be obligation of the United States received by all national and member banks, Federal Reserve banks, for all taxes, customs, and other public dues. They shall be redeemed in lawful money on demand. Believe me, I tried to get them redeemed, and they don't want to redeem them. So anyways, this is 12 U.S.C. 411. And the best, the absolute best that you can get from a Federal Reserve note is discharging a debt with limited liability. There is a distinction between a debt discharged and one paid. When discharged, the debt still exists, though divested of its character as a legal obligation during the operation of the discharge. And so the best that you can get with Federal Reserve notes, now, I'll take your Federal Reserve notes. I put it on my things. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the Federal Reserve notes, the PayPal gifts, the checks, the money orders, etc. And so I'll take them, but I prefer gold or silver coin. Anyways, so you cannot pay anything with the Federal Reserve note. That's why the Form 1020 works so good, because they're saying they want you to pay.
Right.
Right? So then you come back and say, what do you want me to pay? Tell me what to pay. I'll pay it.
Right.
And they can't tell you. So then, under the Uniform Commercial Code, it's discharge. You offer to pay, and they don't accept it, it's discharge. And so that's under the Uniform Commercial Code, which is what they're operating under.
So if someone is buying a house or a property and they're putting it in their name, and it's an expensive house, it's $50,000, $500,000, $1 million or something, if they understand this, they'd be foolish to pay that, because number one, they're putting it in their name. They would better to convert that to silver, if they could, to convert it to silver or gold, and then bring that to the closing, right? Pretty much.
If the thing is, I mean, how many people can pay cash that amount of cash? I mean, you're talking.
Yeah, someone just won the lottery, say whatever.
You can pay that amount of cash?
No, I have a question
Okay.
when you're done.
Okay.
No, but if someone won the lottery, for instance, and they happen to know this, they would basically, it would be better for them if they could to bring in, obviously, the silver. Say, we have it here, it's stored here, you check it out.
Ideally, absolutely,
Or the gold.
because then it's real payment. You
Right.
know, but first of all,
You know, it
the
will take
banksters,
7 years for the bank to prepare you $1 million in cash.
How long?
I don't know, 7 years.
if you, first of all, you're going to be using lawyers,
Yeah.
and you're going to be probably using a title company. Okay, most states, title companies get involved in it because you got to have title insurance and all the rest of this stuff. You know, there's people that I know that brought forward the land patent on their property, and the title company said, if you do that, you will never get title insurance.
Oh, interesting.
Well, think about it.
Yeah.
Think about it. Title insurance is, they're insuring the possibility that there's a defect in the title.
Right.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
If you bring forward the land patent is the absolute best title.
Right.
And it's unassailable. It's unattackable for any reason. And so, if they can't insure that, because that would be fraud. Because they're saying that for them, they have to have an insurable interest.
Yeah.
And if you have absolute title, well, there's no better title than that. And so there's no insurable interest. So that would be fraud for them to sell you insurance on that, because you have a better title than they can give you.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. And by the way, I think I have answered my own question. I thought about it. And basically, you would be better to just basically pay in the Federal Reserve or a check for that property. It was expensive. If you had the wherewithal to do that, if you just inherited money, or if you won a lottery or whatever, you had the money to do that, and then put it into an entity, not in your name. Then take it from that entity, as I mentioned, and then basically for silver, dollar, whatever, then sell it to. In other words, have an entity set up that you control, but don't, you're not the signatory, and then have that transferred or purchased by you personally with silver or gold.
What I would do, quite frankly, if I had that kind of money, I'd go to this Mayor of Wilcox, and I'd say, how much do you want for a section? And I'd give him gold or silver for the section, and I'd still have plenty left over to build myself a really nice house on my section. And I'd have absolute title, I'd have the land patent there, I'd have it all. And if you had $500,000, I bet you he'd take $250,000 for a section, no problem.
Now the section is, how big was the section?
A mile square.
Oh, That's big, yeah.
Yeah, that's big.
Especially if it has trees and it has a water
Well,
supply.
it's desert. It's going to
Oh,
be
desert,
desert.
okay.
I mean,
Okay.
out there it'll be desert. But that was what I was going to show you. Actually, I got sidetracked.
But you know, you can convert a desert to a. You can have, if you have an oasis and so on, you can do all kinds of stuff.
Oh, you certainly can.
They did that in Israel, right?
But yes, they did. If you go on this right here, Safford, right? And if you go on this road north of Safford, I went right across this road right here. Went across the Arizona border, and that climbs up to probably about 8,000 or 9,000 feet. And there's huge trees up there, and it's gorgeous. It's up in the mountains, and like there was one area where there was a sign there, 160 acres for sale, and you could see down in the valley, you could see for miles down
Really?
there. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So you're way up on the side of this mountain, and it was 160 acres, and it was actually flat land too.
So
what do you do for a living over there?
Well, and that's true. That's true. That would be the problem. But if you had something, I mean, that's where I would like to.
People who work from house using computer to make their living,
Yeah.
I
What's it?
can't.
Yeah.
what is that? What
And
did they say?
it's
Apache?
too far to commute. It's long ways away from anything to try and commute back and forth or anything like that. It would be, if anything, for someone that had to be near the city.
What's that forest up there? It says Apache. What's the next one? Word after that? It's like
Sitgraves National Forest?
Sitgraves. Okay.
Apache Sitgraves National Forest, yeah. Anyways, this is pretty nice country up here. And actually, no, I went across down here. Maybe this was it right here. I'll bet you that was it. Yeah, this was the road right here.
Okay, it was
Right
just.
Where I came across, I came down this road and I came across this one right here and went into Safford, and then I went down to Wilcox. Yeah, this was, but you're right. It's definitely, that would be the drawback, is that it's out in the middle of nowhere. You know?
Right.
And it was sure gorgeous up there, though, I'll tell you, man. It was just gorgeous. Had huge trees, huge trees, you know.
Right.
And, you know, big trees like this big around, you know,
Right.
lots
Well, that's
of them,
pretty big.
all over the place.
It wasn't redwoods. They were.
No, they weren't, no.
I mean,
That's
anyone with access of $10 million could do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, or lots of cryptocurrencies. Anyways,
Right. Okay. It's right on the border. Yeah.
so, but that would be, I mean, I don't know who owns the land up there, and some of that's probably government land. So again, I would again, I'm kind of patient when I'm looking, because I have a lot of criteria. It's got to be something I can pay cash for. I don't buy land with credit.
Right.
I'm not interested in mortgages or any of that stuff.
Right.
And but you can find those kinds of deals around, and around here probably. Well, not necessarily here, but say up in West Virginia. I'll bet you can find deals like that in West Virginia for sure.
You know, in West Virginia, like I said, it's probably.
Yeah. I bet you can for sure. Or even like when I came here, my GPS took me through 340. I went around DC, which I wasn't complaining. I was glad it went around DC. Usually it takes me through DC. And I wasn't too excited about going through DC with all this shit that's going on right now. And so my GPS actually, it must have, I had a software upgrade on my GPS. And it took me around, and so I was glad that it did.
Oh, wow.
But it was definitely country roads. There was some little narrow roads and stuff like that. But it went around DC, and I went on 340, is US 340,
Okay.
and wound up on Highway I-70. Wound up on I-70, and then went into Maryland, and then came across, you know, on 695 and 95 and all that, through into barely when it gets into New Jersey. You go on 295 on the toll road, That's
Do you have
how
any places where they, this is barely illegal, but they basically stop people, like especially if a big road all of a sudden goes through a small town, all of a sudden now they got cops on both sides.
Yeah.
They're checking basically to see if you're in the state, if you have this or that, or
No,
or
never had any trouble
something like that.
No,
Because those are basically illegal anyway, right?
I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised. I would have been. There was a sign on the on 295. It was in New Jersey,
Yeah.
and it said something about have you isolated?
Are you wearing a mask?
Are you from out of state? Have you done your isolation
Oh, yeah,
or
yeah,
something
right.
like that?
14-day
14
quarantine.
day
Yeah.
Quarantine, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I just ignored it and kept right on going, and you know what I mean?
Like, how are they going to know someone has quarantined themselves for 14 days?
Yeah. Yeah,
It's all nonsense.
yeah, it's all a bunch of garbage.
Right. Exactly.
And it's not even it's not even that. It's like the number of people that have died have been like, and they're basically inflating the numbers.
It's
by
way down.
calling any deaths.
It's way
Well,
down.
CDC just came out, not just, it was the Monday of Labor Day weekend,
Yeah.
or week before Labor Day weekend, where they correct their number down to 6%, but I'm still going and asking friends, have you found one shred of scientific proof
Yeah, there ain't.
that what you claim kills people, it is what you claim it kills people?
Yeah.
No, they can't. Because number one, they didn't even isolate the virus. How can you have a vaccine if you don't have isolated the
But this is
virus?
the thing. Until today, there's not a scientific proof, right?
No.
Nothing has been isolated.
It's all.
And PCR test, implementing 7 to 8 times over and over, is going to show just
See,
about anything.
the fact that
you
people are
wanna
talking
find.
about this just proves that Hitler was right when he says, you just keep telling a lie over and over and over again, and people will buy it.
Yeah,
And that's what
okay.
they're doing.
I
Ain't
have
that
a
the truth?
statement to prove it.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? Anyways, so the best that you can get with Federal Reserve notes are a private money system. That's why there's the tax. There's a Supreme Court case. I wonder if I got that next. Nope, I don't. There's a Supreme Court case called Carlisle versus United States from 1873 that says that everything not privileged is sovereign. And so that's the privilege. When you use the Federal Reserve notes, that's why the taxes, that's why everything. And when you use the Federal Reserve notes, that's a privilege. And so the key is not to take advantage of the privileges. And that's why I put on my this is my price list. Anybody that's seen one?
When you pay for a product with the notes, is that product yours?
No. Technically, Federal Reserve notes are evidence of the debt of the United States, right? So they're, what they are is they're bills of credit, bills of United States credit. So then think about it. If you buy something with the United States credit, who owns it? United States owns it. That's right.
But
So-
I can exactly walk into a gun store and purchase a firearm using silver coins.
They made it illegal.
That's true. And most of these people are totally clueless, and they just want Federal Reserve notes, and so the best thing to do is just give it to them, and if necessary, you have to pay the tax.
Which is fine. Is it mine?
Well, that's a good question. I would say
Possession is 9/10 of the
possession's 9/10 of the law. That's right, but
Yeah.
technically, I mean, they can seize it, can't they? So if they can seize it, then technically, if they want to seize it, then it's not yours, is it?
They did.
They did. So on my order form, I put, if you put here, if you look, item 1, DVD set of previous presentations, and it says 5, and then it's got a star there, cost each. And then if you look at the star, you go down here, and it says, the preferred method of payment is by pieces of silver, 1 troy ounce each, pure silver, right? So that's
you
asking.
have a legend there?
Sorry?
You have a legend on the bottom?
Yeah. And it says, as a less desirable alternative, I can accept commercial paper, and then in brackets, cash, legal tender, money orders, email money transfer, etc. And that's in brackets. If you need to make it payable, use Glenfern or leave it blank. Anyways, the point is that I'm saying that I prefer a gold or silver coin, but as a less desirable alternative, I can accept a commercial paper. And I've had people with email address called taxman@gmail.com send me an email saying that they would like my order form, and so I send it to them, and I never hear back. They never want to buy anything. And but I think what they're doing is they're looking to get some revenue, and because I put that stuff on there, they can't. Because again, I prefer gold or silver coin.
Right.
This is not a privilege anymore because I don't really want it.
Right.
Okay, it's a less desirable alternative.
Comes under the doctrine of necessity.
That's right.
You can't use anything else, so you have to use it.
I'm forced to use it because everybody else is using it.
All right, let me ask you, when you mentioned about buying a firearm or whatever and going in and they require that, what's to stop two people, maybe friends or whatever, and they both buy the same thing, okay? Now they want to basically own it outright. Well, what's to stop them after they purchase that to sell it to one another for gold or silver?
Good.
The statute of rule.
Can't use gold.
I
don't
can't
think
buy
You
that
do
for you
anything
for
you
silver.
want on a private
If you
sale.
want to buy that gold from me,
Private sale.
I'm going to have from gold or silver, what's to stop me? Or and then I could base
should
check.
be fine, right?
Well,
If you buy something it's a federal offense, especially with firearms, to buy a firearm for someone else.
no, you
Not
bought it
for
for
someone
yourself. No, you bought it for yourself. But you're
If you buy it for yourself.
But then you're selling it to someone. He just happens to have the same type of firearm. Right. And well, what's to stop from doing that?
Who knows? I would.
There's registration of the firearm, which
what-
I'm sure will have a big deal.
Oh, because it'll be
Depends on the
registered.
You
state
can
buying
find
it.
Okay.
you can find lots of gun dealers
Yeah.
that are. I wouldn't say lots, but you can find gun dealers that are patriots that don't like what's going on,
Right.
and you just have to explain it to them that I want to give you gold or silver coin, and they'd probably go along with it, but they'd still make you go through the. But they probably, if they really know the law, they wouldn't charge any tax.
registration.
Yeah,
or
you probably
transfer
have to.
of
That's
Right.
where the problem comes in registering it. That's where
Right.
that's where they're able to collect
Right.
the guns in
Right.
Germany because they
That's
register.
why I like Arizona, because Arizona or even Texas, because I go to the gun show. I bought myself a 308 with
Okay.
a match grade barrel. You know what a match grade barrel is?
No.
It's a heavy barrel. It's really heavy,
Right.
and it's got a bipod.
should be near an inch in thickness.
Oh.
Sorry.
Should be near an
It was
inch.
like a King
yeah,
Cobra.
it's really heavy. Yeah, it's heavy.
Hey.
And but see, the problem is that when it's bolt action, right? It's meant to be a sharpshooting rifle.
Right.
It's got a bipod.
I have that on my Ruger Precision.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah,
you put that in
yeah.
show. So what about Texas and Arizona?
Sorry.
What about Texas and Arizona as opposed to other states? If you were to buy
All
it
you need is state ID, and they don't then and if it's a private deal, it's not an FFL. It's not from a gun dealer. Okay. There's lots of
So you
people
don't
at
go
gun
to
shows.
a background check?
Huh? No background check. No.
So which ID did you
Nothing.
use for that when you bought
State
it?
Well,
ID.
I used Arizona.
State
I
issue
used
ID.
Arizona driver's license.
Okay, could you use a passport?
No, it has
You'd
to,
have
has
to
to
have
be
something
related
showing-
to the state.
You can
Oh.
use the passport. You have to have something showing that you live in Arizona.
Oh, I see. You can only buy. In other words, you have to either have some
Gotta go.
interest in that state.
If you can show
Oh.
that you live there,
Okay.
then but you could use a passport and then show them that you live there in Arizona, maybe a utility bill or something.
Okay.
I mean, they just need to know you got to live in Arizona,
I see. Okay.
and they don't write it down. They just, as long as you show it to them, they're happy. They
Okay.
give you the gun, you give them the cash.
Because technically, I think you're not supposed to have more than like one state ID, or in other words, if you did have an ID or a driver's license
Yeah.
in California,
Yeah.
technically you're not supposed to have one.
Some
in
of
Utah.
them talk to each other, but there's 5 states that don't share information with other states.
Oh, really?
Like Tennessee's one of them.
Oh.
For you, Tennessee's one of them.
Oh.
You can get they can, like with Texas, they can pull up information, you know, from Texas or Arizona even, here in New Jersey. If I got stopped by the cops, I give them the Arizona driver's license, they'd pull up whatever information's in the computer.
Okay.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But with Tennessee, they can't.
And what are the, do you know the other
There's
states?
5 other states. I'm not sure. There's 5 states total. You could go on Wikipedia, and that's all.
Right.
That's actually pretty well known.
Okay.
The ID sharing information. I know
Okay.
Tennessee's one of them because a friend of
Tennessee.
mine used to live in Tennessee,
Right.
and it was kind of interesting. We talked about it.
Hmm.
He had a Tennessee driver's license, and he worked for FedEx,
Well,
and
Okay.
FedEx is based in Memphis, Tennessee.
okay.
And so, anyways, yes, Nelson.
Regarding the gun, the 5-star passport, if one is able to get one, that then doesn't allow them to seize the gun, but I think you have to be a foreign sovereign.
I have a 5-star. I just got one last year.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. Was there another question you had too?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
5-star.
regarding the land.
Uh-huh.
Is anyone aware of anyone who has brought forth a land patent with existing house or utilities on it?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because, you know, the closer you get to the populated areas
Right.
here, I mean, there's so many of these entities, government entities, public utilities, that are connected to servicing them.
Right. Right.
So,
I don't think
is there a way to do that,
it matters.
really?
A lot of it depends on how corrupt the county is and all that stuff, because it's really all in the county. I got to use the restroom.
You sure about that with the 5-star?
Could I see yours?
5 stars on what?
Yeah. Well, how long has your family been in the States?
Long time. Well, I don't know. My father's side goes beyond before 18 something. I'm not sure.
What am I missing here?
That's
5 stars on
why
what?
you got it.
Passport.
They don't give that to anybody.
Oh, really?
That gives you
Where?
the right to carry a gun on
It's
a
a
plane.
state
I
passport
understand.
rather than
Really?
a US
You
passport.
don't have to register any gun. You basically are a real sovereign.
So I should not be stopped then. In other words,
If you
am I-
give them that, and they'll say, "Go on your way, sir." A friend of mine.
What is that?
It's only for people who've been here since 17 something. Their families. It's not available.
But how can they say that
they know?
they haven't been?
They know who we are. Like, for example, my heritage goes back to Switzerland in the 1500s. They've known who everybody is all the way forward because of whatever, collecting taxes, who's who. And so then when you come over here, one of my relatives got naturalized while it was an English colony for the province of Pennsylvania prior to the Revolutionary War. So my understanding is, you know, the level of stars that they offer you on the passport card, they don't put it on your passport. Like when you travel internationally, this is for use inside of, you know,
Right.
the 50 states.
Average Joe Schmo cop on a road trooper will still pull him over and write him a summons.
That's not correct. I'm just
They'll
telling
still pull him over, but when they see the passport,
you. Right. That's
their
it.
computer, they pull it up in their computer and it tells them. So
No, I haven't tried that yet. I don't know if that. I'm not looking to. I have not been stopped, but that's what I would have given him. Would have been my.
So that's one of the.
So you have 5 stars on your passport card?
Yeah, he
Yeah, but I
he
remember.
didn't- Go ahead.
I remember going
You're
to
the
the
only one
airport.
that
I don't
most
go to the
people
airport much,
know
but
of.
I got, you know, we have to take off your shoes. I don't have to do that anyway.
Uh-huh.
They said, well, you have to just wait here. But I'm pretty sure I had the passport then, and I had the, you know, want to go back and no. I'm waiting for you. I want other people to see what's going on, and I don't trust what they do back there anyway.
Right.
But yeah, so that's so technically I should not be. I should be able to. I should be able to go just through a metal detector.
Right. So unfortunately, my understanding is, and this is one of the problems
Yeah.
when we're, it's really all about status and standing, and
Yeah.
I liken it, because I have a lot of friends that,
Well, that's the 5 stars there?
But is this something you need to apply for?
Yes.
Yeah,
but-
you have to fill it. I went to.
But you have to explain to them, I can send you
Yeah.
Interesting.
the email, which if you're not, if you don't
Well,
go back.
I can't trace back to
Yeah.
1700s here.
No, I know.
But I'd like to have one of these.
But they can't.
No, but the point is that when, it would be like if I went to your home country, if you weren't born here. Were you born here? No. On the States? Okay. If I went to, Romania or somewhere, and I got there and I said, well, I'm here, and they'd be like, yeah, so, and
Right.
oftentimes if you have a lot of money, that buys you certain privileges. But the purpose of the Treaty of Peace of 1783,
That goes back to rights.
that's the rights and privileges of the posterity of who fought in that war to free us from the King of England on the land. He kept the sea. So I don't want to get off the subject of the land, Glenn, but the point is that will...
I don't know, we had Polish army fighting here early 1800s, late 1700s.
No, there you go. Okay, so maybe you're correct. So the question they ask you is, what reason do you feel you're entitled to this? And that's the reason you would put.
You mean like Kosciuszko?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the reason you would put.
If you,
Kosciuszko.
are you,
But that-
No, it might be
Okay,
even just
Cisco.
the fact that the Army was here. That's a very interesting point. But the State Department will look at it, and they have their rules. And they couldn't give him a 1-star, 2-star, or 3-star because they know who he was.
Well,
He didn't even-
but I made that point. I put
Oh, so you
I
did
put
put
extra
it in.
I put extra paperwork in. Yeah.
So which is
Okay.
better, as 1 or 5-star?
5 stars for
Now,
sure.
did you use the sequence that's been published?
Well, there's a fellow named Straight. I didn't do all that he did because he had like a 35-page.
Is that something you have to prove?
David
or
Strait?
is that something
Yeah.
they'll be looking for?
But I didn't do
trace
to the
that
extent. I did
is
like
a
5-page
trace?
addendum. I added onto it, and I had an argument with the guy. Well, not really an argument. He said, well, as far as we're concerned, I said, I told him not a U.S. citizen, so on. Well, as far as we're concerned, now, I don't know if he just said that, and he said, but they sent it to me like within 5 days. I had it. You can go back tomorrow. I wasn't going to go back because I came from New York. I went to the office in Stamford, Connecticut. It wasn't too bad, I got back within 4 hours. I was there back and forth. So, but I did get it. It was sent, and but I haven't.
They have the authority at Stanford. That's like the regional
Yes,
passport
right.
in 5 states. A lot of states.
I think there's only one in
Stanford,
right,
Connecticut,
exactly.
yeah.
Like there's one in New York City. I think Buffalo.
Right.
In New
So
York.
wait. So forgive me. Your question was.
You got me. Who is there
Oh,
to
do you
to
have to
prove?
ask it, or they have to?
Right.
Yes. Again, my understanding is he put in paperwork that said here's why he expects certain.
Right.
I don't know if you named it, but
It's how you fill out the form, as well. So
So I'm incorrect, and they could have maybe if you don't ask for it. So obviously he did,
Yeah.
because I was presuming he just by accident.
No,
got
well,
it.
I didn't.
Okay,
I
so
put
he
in- Yeah.
filled out his paperwork
Yeah.
and included some sort of affidavit or something where you claimed the right.
There's a procedure there's a fellow down in Moonshine. What is it? Something.
Yeah,
like-
copper moonshine
Copper
stills.
moonshine, right.
That was
Exactly.
the one I was trying to...
Yeah, copper
That-
moonshine.
the man,
The
man who got,
process.
many people have said and maybe it's because they don't have the actual ability, but you make a very good point, and it's possible that the State Department of this country has an agreement with the State Department of Poland, if that's where you're from, that if someone of your ancestry is here and you ask for this benefit, this privilege of being, or a right actually, because I think it is a right, I don't even think it's a privilege, it's a right to that. Like he has a right to it.
Right,
So they
I'd
want to
say
know
so.
why you have the right. And his answer is, my ancestors, my answer would be my ancestors, your answer would be the ancestors who fought here to help free America or whatever.
Right.
I don't know what happened.
Right.
I've never heard of that, but
Mhm.
that would be interesting. So that's a possibility.
Just like I'm still questioning.
And they wouldn't have taken
how
they wouldn't have taken your gun.
if we already happen to be in a courtroom and you know, people raise their birth certificate and say, well, no, you're after this guy.
Right.
I'm here on behalf. I'm the trustee or
the beneficiary.
beneficiary.
Making you the trustee, I think. Right. Them.
They want you to be the
Where
trustee.
do
and they
I
want to be the
stand with my Polish birth certificate, which my birth certificate, my name is in proper spelling and in proper order.
Right.
Mm.
My understanding is
And then I
Same
have
place.
and
because they
then I
said-
have
they've
the
been using the birth certificate
naturalization
papers.
paper
Right, but that made you a U.S. citizen. Right?
or citizen of.
Which is a
Well, there are two entities used:
Mhm.
the United States of America and the United States.
well, I have to look at it. and I'm sure-
Naturalization process makes you a U.S. citizen or
Yeah.
attached to the U.S. corporation.
Correct.
Right.
That's
That-
what it is. So
Right.
people that come over here, the last thing they should do is naturalize.
Right. but
I understood that a little differently.
Yeah, because that's what they tell you.
But again, what it
See,
comes
I was aiming of becoming an American.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. But you became
They
an
had
American
other
citizen.
plans.
You
They-
are
Just
a
American.
citizen.
They had other plans.
Yeah.
I think the important thing is don't give evidence against yourself. So I wouldn't bring that issue up, quite frankly. And so you give the stuff, give the evidence that you want them to have, and you don't give the evidence you don't want them to have. You know what I mean?
And I would offer a slightly different potential plan, which would be go back, retrace your steps, revoke the signature. You had to sign, right?
Yeah.
To be a naturalized citizen.
Yeah.
Right?
You take an oath as well, though.
Yeah. So I renounce my oath.
Yeah.
Right.
So back up to as if you landed here, and then proceed with an
So I
application.
landed here with a gray envelope with a gold seal on it.
I don't know what that means.
That means I came here basically holding a green card in my hand.
Okay.
From
And
Poland.
with what government were you discussing this with? Because there's two national governments, I heard, right, Glenn?
Yeah.
At least two.
There's at least two. So which government were you dealing with?
It's probably United States
I-
of America.
I,
right?
So you have to see who you were
Yeah.
dealing
It's-
with. Right,
it's-
right now, we don't have enough information.
I
I
wouldn't
don't think
reason
you would have
for
been
it.
dealing with the
I-
Judicial
I'm-
because
Correct,
nobody's
exactly.
nobody's
But
in that
But
office.
when
Right.
you send in this passport application,
Mhm.
they have the power to allow. They are representing the de jure government under the passport.
but I believe everything was under U.S.
Actually, the passport's a military document.
Yes, it is.
Right,
It's
but that's
otherwise
because
not
we're
actually
under,
required.
under martial law. But the point is that they have an obligation to the de jure government. The Secretary of State,
They do.
right,
That's true.
right. That's why he got the 5-star,
Right.
because when he told them X, Y, Z,
Certain things.
just
that's
like
right.
when you know,
Right.
you just like so it's like very similar.
Right. Statement of original status is what I use.
Right. So in his case, it may be you'd have to find out what rights, what deal, what treaty Poland made with the U.S. when they sent troops over, and you might find it right in there that your people, the leader said to this de jure government, if any of our people come over, this is how they'll be treated. But I don't know that. You have to look at that.
Yeah, that's something worth looking into, though.
Yeah,
for
that's
sure.
How
exciting.
would you
Very
even
interesting,
begin
yeah.
looking for something like that?
Well, if there was Polish, I know there was Russians here that came to help with the War of Independence, and I didn't know there was Polish people here,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
it wouldn't
Oh, yeah.
surprise me. And so then, what I would look for is, I would look, and there's international documents in the law library. I would look for any treaties or agreements between the U.S.
Excuse me, I can cut to the chase. In 2015 or so, there's every treaty that the State Department honors from the beginning. It's on their website, Secretary of State.
Oh, okay.
And that's where there was like 500 treaties. So you'd have to start reading the treaties.
You'd have to look through there. But they're probably organized by dates, I'll bet you.
Dates and...
So
names.
that'd be easy. You go back to like in the 1700s,
Right,
late
Revolutionary War.
1700s.
It's by date. That's
Revolutionary
exactly-
War, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Because that's what I found that by going through the Treaty of Peace. Because the Treaty of Peace is what stopped the fight of 1783. So that's one of the founding documents of what began to establish the. Because we were still under the Continental Congress. We were fighting. I was from New Jersey, they're from Pennsylvania, whatever it was. And then they were under the Articles of Confederation still when that was signed. And that went through to 87 when the Constitution then, when they formed a stronger federal government. So the states still had rights, themselves. They withheld certain rights. They said, look, we're a foreign nation, basically. We're a separate nation, I should say. State.
Or sovereign.
We're a sovereign state. But we're agreeing to be together as a federation. That's different than the confederation. So you have to learn the difference between a confederation, a confederacy, and a federation. So we were a confederacy. And that's why the South, when they went back, when they said, see you later, they were going backwards. They said, we want to go back to what we were.
Well, and the South, in the Articles of Confederation, it says that it's permanent, too. Perpetual, that was it, yeah. And so...
there was a lot of argument going on, and that's all for 20, 30 years. That was where Congress was trying to fix things.
Right.
States were coming in, are you a slave, are you not a slave? I mean, it was a mess. And we're trying to go west, fighting Indians.
Right. A lot of changes happening.
So,
anyways, yeah. But I would also look in your Polish government equivalent website for similar things, because what happens is that, and I don't believe that the U.S. and Poland ever went to war, but I can tell you that the U.S. and England did go to war, and when any two countries go to war
Against each other?
yeah, War of 1812 was U.S. and England, and so what happens?
But we were here.
They brought down the White House.
Yeah,
they invaded us
yeah, they did.
after we declared war, though.
One of the actions is they burned the White House and the National Archives.
Right.
And anyways, the reason that's important is because when something like that happens, all the treaties get thrown out. And then only the ones that they decide that they're going to reaffirm become reaffirmed. And so, like the Definitive Treaty of Peace, they reaffirmed that.
Right.
And
Thank goodness.
huh?
Thank goodness.
Well, and so there could be other treaties that they didn't reaffirm that are, you start looking at that stuff, that might be relevant about history, about what happened,
And
you know?
I think that is why on that, what I read on the site, there was about 500 of them.
Right.
They were all valid. So in other words, if I read something on that, one of those 500 treaties, it still was present. Like they didn't, it wasn't
They had
one
reaffirmed them.
they had reaffirmed.
Right.
Whatever was there was what the State Department honors.
Right.
Treaty, international treaties.
Right.
So I'm sorry, you not happen to have such passport. Are you trying to?
Who, me?
Yes.
I have not applied for it. I believe based on everything I've done, I spent 30 hours tracking back to, because it wasn't easy. You have to piece it all together with land records. I found out I had 3 people in the Army in Pennsylvania for George Washington's Army, and it has their card, from when they were So I put all that in writing, and that I'm going to put in, like he did, why you're entitled to certain, to a certain status, essentially. And the rumor has it, and most people, there's not a lot of people, have figured this out and gotten it from a in fact, me is one example. And you have to go through the process.
That comes from where? From federal government?
Yeah.
The State Department,
State
which is run by England. They were the hired hands running the government. That was part of the. Well, maybe I'm incorrect about that. It could be the 1871 deal when they did that municipal act. That's when they took over.
Yeah, I think the State Department is the State Department for. Of course, it was actually set up in the 1700s. The State Department was set up. There was a Secretary of State back then.
Right.
But
and that had to do with the Titles of Nobility Act, and what England was trying to do was put their lawyers into government.
But what happened is there's the passport is United States of America. If you look on that passport card, it'll be United States of America, not the United States of America.
Right.
And
It's a territorial power.
it's martial law. It's interesting to note on this Republic of Texas land patent, it's upper and lower case.
Get out.
Yeah.
The whole thing?
Republic of Texas. Look at it.
Yeah.
Of what?
Excellent.
It spells Republic of Texas in
okay,
upper and
I
lower
read
case.
that, right. So therefore, that's the de jure.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely, yeah.
So that proves it. So, yeah, actually, if it were me, I would call the Polish embassy.
Right.
Because they want to help their people, anybody that wakes up, maybe. I mean, you could at least
You might-
try that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
ask
they
them
might be
about
able to steer
that.
you in the right
They'll
direction.
They'll know what treaties they're under because they're diplomats.
That might be a place to look for sure, because they might know where to look.
It might be
You know,
one
they
in
might
New
be able
York.
to tell you where to look. Anyway, should we go take a lunch break? It's 20 minutes to 1. Or do we want to keep covering this? We still got a lot of material to cover here.
I'm fine.
Okay, let's keep going.
I'm not even hungry.
A promissory note is a contract, a written promise to pay a certain sum of money at a future time unconditionally. A promissory note differs from mere acknowledgement of debt without any promise to pay when a debtor gives his creditor an IOU. So Federal Reserve notes are IOUs, if you think about it. It used to say that you could go get some gold or silver coin, but now all it says is this note is legal tender. So then by definition, it's an IOU.
Right, like a silver certificate or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, the silver certificate said you go get some silver,
Right.
but now it just is an IOU.
Yeah.
And so that's about my YouTube channel that they are locking me out of right now. This is an act in 1820 making further provision for the sale of public lands, which is approved at 3 Stat 566. And in section 2 it says, be it further enacted that credit shall not be allowed for the purchase money on the sale of any of the public lands which shall be sold. And this is Senator King in New York in March of 1820 during the passage of the act for the sale of the public lands. It was calculated to plant in the new country a population of independent, unembarrassed freeholders, that it would place in every man the power to purchase a freehold, the price of which could be cleared in 3 years, that it would cut up speculation and monopoly, that it would prevent the accumulation of alarming debt, which experience proved never would and never could be paid. So, again, when you have a land patent, it's unassailable. It's untouchable. This is a Supreme Court case, 1863. We are then to regard the revolution in these acts of assembly as emancipating every acre of the soil of Pennsylvania from the grand characteristic of the feudal system, even as to the lands held by the proprietaries themselves, they held them as other citizens held under the Commonwealth, and that by a title purely allodial. All our lands are held immediately by the state, by the titles purged of all the rubbish of the Dark Ages, excepting only the feudal names of things not any longer feudal. Under the Acts of Assembly I've alluded to, the state became the proprietor of all lands, but instead of giving them like a feudal lord to an enslaved tenantry, she sold them for the best price she could get and conferred on the purchaser the same absolute title she held herself. And these have been reserved, as well as everything else has been granted by contract. And that's, I guess, probably a Pennsylvania Supreme Court case.
Yeah, but they're referring to the Queen there, aren't they? Or they're
State
referring
she
to
held
the state.
herself.
The state is she. They're calling the state
State
she.
she, okay.
Yeah.
The only reason I mentioned that is because I said yesterday when we were talking about this that Victoria was the one who granted a lot of land patents, but that was in Canada. I'm not sure if the US or the states were part of that.
Well, I can tell you that Pennsylvania is called Pennsylvania because it was granted to William Penn. And so it was basically all of Pennsylvania was a land patent that was granted to William Penn. And that was like in the 1600s. Now, getting a hold of that land patent, I know other people that have been wanting to bring forward the land patent for land in Pennsylvania, and they haven't been able to pull it, bring it forward. So,
Really?
you know, but again, if it's not going to be, so it could be on something as big as Pennsylvania, you know, and that's what you have to understand. It's not going to be on your little piece of property. It's going to be on a huge tract. Could be a huge tract. It's going to be probably at least 160 acres.
Well, that's what I heard about the one in New York, is that if you went, we can't get that, but there's a big plaque or big, show, and it's sitting right near, it's right in their office hanging up. What's that up there? Someone said, can I get a copy of that? That's what you need, a copy of that, right?
If that covers your land, then that's the land patent.
Right.
Because they only issue it once.
Right.
It's only issued once.
Yeah, it was the original land patent in this country, I think, was Rensselaer, which is outside of Albany. It's, so, yeah.
So it's only issued once.
Mm-hmm.
And they only sell it once, because it's the government selling the land, right?
Right.
They only sell it once because after that somebody else owns it, right?
Yep.
They can't sell it twice.
Right.
And so, anyway, so it's going to be on a much larger piece of land than your land, and it could be a huge piece of land, like the guy in Arizona, 400,000 acres.
Right. Right.
You know,
That's amazing that man had that not that long ago. He had that much land. It's not like it was 100 years ago.
no, I was talking to him here like within the last couple months.
That's unbelievable. 400,000.
Yeah.
I mean, there's got to be under all that
There's
land.
other people that got those kinds of parcels too, guaranteed, lots of them. Just have to find out who they are.
Yeah, I think
Right.
a lot though were attached originally to the railroads who had a lot of money, and then they bought up extra parcels.
Well, and so those
that
ones
was going on in those days too.
Those ones would have been sold off, though. The railroads, they're using that land to finance the railroads, so they're going to sell it off.
But what I'm saying is the people who bought them then bought other people's lots of land, so they ended up spreading out the
Could be.
plots of land that
Could
they
be.
owned.
Could be.
And that, you'll see if you watch some of the old movies, that was going on, but they were forcing people,
Right.
out of their land.
Right.
Shutting off the water and stuff like that.
Right.
To be able to make them sell.
Right. So they could take it over. Right.
Yeah. And that's what was going
Killing
on.
them in the middle of the night.
So if the railroad was smart,
That too.
they would sell off a section and then skip a section, and then skip, sell, and then skip. This way, when those build up, they're adjacent. They got adjacent properties that are now even more valuable. I don't know if they did that. But.
Well, some of them, like the lands were patent, where the lands were granted was like a checkerboard.
Right.
Even now, if you go into Arizona you'll find a lot of places where it's like a checkerboard. In other words, there'll be one section that's BLM land, and then the section next door will be state land. And then the next section will be BLM land, and then it'll be state land. It'll be sections. Every time it'll be a section.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, so there's that for sure. Now, whether there's private land mixed with, of course, the state could have sold off their land, so then you'd have private land in between BLM land.
Right.
So there's going to be that too. And what I would, you know, there was some land in southern Utah I was looking at, and it was private land mixed with BLM land. And so what was happening is the cattle ranchers owned the private land, and they would run their cattle on the BLM land. See what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And so one advantage of all of that is that, you know, Scallion says there's going to come a point in time when there's riots in every major city and a great nation is going to disappear in one day. So about that time, I'd be building something on that BLM land and squatting on it.
Right.
Because all you have to do is squat on it for 7 years, and now you own it. You see what I'm saying?
Can someone squat on their own land and own it?
Well, technically, it's with your own land. Possession's 9/10 of the law, right?
Somewhere
And
else
so
you have to somehow prove that you're on it and you're taking care of it.
There's two kinds of title. There's legal title and equitable title.
Right.
And so if you have a mortgage, the bank has equitable title. And so even though you have legal title, the bank has equitable title. If you don't satisfy that mortgage, then they're going to steal it from you. You see what I'm saying? So whether you're squatting on it or not, it's not going to make any difference.
Was your title on the deed that you have there, or that patent, that would be lawful title, right? Not legal.
Well, it's the patent is legal and lawful. It's
lawful.
everything and equitable.
Right.
Because when the government sells the land, they don't sell it to you with a mortgage. You know, you buy it, or you homestead it. Either way, after 7 years, you get it for it's complete ownership. You see what I'm saying? And that's what this senator
What year was that, Glenn, please?
Huh?
What year was it?
18.
That's 1820.
Thank you.
So Glenn, I'm in a house that was owned by my parents, and they didn't have a will, and it's been over 7 years. Would it be mine finally undisclosed rights?
I would say yeah. I mean, you could actually probably do a quiet title action, and you bring a quiet title action in the state court. Is there property taxes you're paying on it?
See, that's another. I was trying to discharge those. So what happened is they sold a lien. So I did start paying the trust that bought the lien, but I'm not paying the current ones. I want to discharge those.
I would use the Form 1020. I mean, that's perfect.
Okay.
And that's worked for me every time I've used it, quite frankly.
And I would send that to the.
And there's whoever sends you the bill.
Okay.
Okay, and there's other people I know that use those things.
Yes.
The guy that showed me, Kerry Zolman, he's used it on property taxes. Worked great.
That's what I need.
And
water.
That's what I would use.
The water bill too.
Is the Form 1020. The water bill
is different.
Well, no, you could probably do it on the water bill, but
Okay.
they might cut your water off.
Oh.
You know,
Yeah.
and because they can do that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
With the land, you know, once you're, like you say, possession's 9/10 of the law. If you're living on the land and you're given on the Form 1020, there's not much they can do. You see what I'm saying?
Can they cut your utilities off, your electric and gas for any reason for that?
If not for, because it's separate. Okay, the utility company is different than the property taxes.
Right.
It's all separate.
It's separate.
It's separate.
But with the
I should be
10,
able to discharge water taxes. If there's no money, I should be able to discharge those too. I did send them up.
I would. Well, I mean, I like using the Form 1020 because it basically you offer to pay and they can never come back and answer it, and so then it gets discharged is what happens. But anyways, what?
can you pay someone else's taxes if you understand that with the 1020? In other words, a family member, as opposed to you just what you actually quote own or have control over.
Run that by me once more.
In other words, can you use a 1020 to pay off someone else's property taxes?
You're not paying them off.
You don't.
You're asking
First of all,
them,
Oh, I'm
First of
sorry.
all-
what do you want?
Whatever. Okay. I'm face. Okay.
It would have to be done in their name, not yours.
It has to
because
be in
That's
their
right.
name.
It's
Okay.
got to be in your
Okay.
name.
So-
But I mean, just show them the form and get them to do it.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
So I don't, because I'm not familiar with the 10. I never heard of the 1020. I've never.
Whoever is in interest would have to do it for themselves, I guess.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah. So whoever the deed name.
What does it entail? Does it entail them do something with their birth certificate or with?
No. Well, it's like a conditional acceptance. I agree that I will pay these demands
Right.
if you can tell me what you want,
As a form
how
of
you
payment.
want the form of payment, and they can't answer because they can't.
So what species, in other words, what species of money?
species, not species.
What species, right,
Yeah.
species of money.
So okay, so that you do that, you send it in and they don't respond. Will you then get another bill, or will they get another?
Well, you'll have to do an
Earlier-
estoppel thing. It's a process.
Oh.
You give them 30 days,
Right.
and then after the 30 days, well, you haven't responded. I'm going to give you another 30 days. If you fail to respond, then I'm going to hold you in default, and any of your demands, I will
And now null and void.
null and void. Yeah.
So-
and I won't owe you anything.
So in other words, once that's completed, that process, whether you owed, I don't know, a couple $1,000s or $20,000, whatever you might have owed,
And
you're saying that.
so at that moment, someone converts something and sends it off to a lien company or third-party debt collector.
Well, I mean, the debt collectors are usually easy
So
to deal
technically,
with.
I could use that where if you have it in it's not in your name, it's in you're in control of an LLC.
They can't.
Can you still use that 1020 or form or no?
They can't proceed further.
Sorry?
In
Can
an
you
action
use that like
against
the
you.
situation
Like
I
they send
have
me a
with
letter
payment.
saying,
building in
"Oh, you owe this
upstate
much.
New York?
How do I kick them
Where
out of my
they
yard?"
was not we recorded the deed, but
For
it was
debt
sold to
collector,
an
yeah.
entity that I set up, an LLC.
You need a debt
and they were
collector
sending the thing out
verification.
Can the LLC use the
And again,
1020?
that's a-
Yes.
Yes.
that's a
I use
process
it
again
with
that you would go
trusts
through,
or
so
all sorts of
you would
things.
ask them the same thing.
And I never sign them. They're never signed.
You
I
would
just
ask
print the
them,
name at the bottom.
for proof of claim.
Okay, so what do you just not see a bill
Where
or?
did the debt
or you-
come from? How
In other words, they don't say
About
once you.
writing
I'll
using
show you when
proper
we do the
words. I
presentation
can
next
do
week.
it.
Oh, next week. Okay.
well, there are.
Actually, I mean that's
You have
pretty
to
powerful.
understand
Yeah,
what
they
it-
send them
It's
what-
pretty
what
slick.
says
It's
eternal
clear.
care.
So-
Yeah.
Okay, so
it's
okay,
not
that
helpful.
okay. Let me ask you
There are
because that
templates.
I
The
mean,
Form
I mean-
1020 is my own made-up form. Okay, you can use any old number you want.
Oh, you made that up. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but you still want to do a land patent on the
But so
property.
a form is something that's going to be used in a court of law.
Okay, right.
And so if you look it up in a law dictionary, a form is a skeleton of something that's going to be used in a court of law.
Okay, so
And
there's nothing
so-
if you go to the IRS, if you put 1020 in there, it's not going to show anything.
No. It's my own made-up form.
Did you like register that somewhere?
No,
No.
absolutely not. I don't need your permission.
Okay.
So, yeah, 'cause
Did
it's
you
not-
record it? I mean, record it rather. Did you record it?
Sorry?
Did you patent it?
No.
No. Did you record it anywhere? The form.
No.
No.
Would it make sense to record it?
No. Why?
No.
It's going to
Well-
be different every time.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, okay. 'Cause even though it's the number is what I'm saying, the 1020 number.
Whatever.
Oh.
It's going to be different every time because it depends on the situation, where you're using it, and how you're using it, and there's all sorts of variables.
And how long have you been using it for?
Probably a couple of years.
The main thing, it has to have the law, refers to the law. Like somewhere on there
Of
it
course
shows
it does.
a
Of
statute.
course it does.
So
All
that's
sorts
what
of-
they're going to be looking at.
It's has some court citations. We'll
Court
talk
citations.
about it next week when
Okay.
we go through that part of that presentation.
And besides like property taxes, what else have you used it for? Could be-
I've used it for property taxes, for anything where there's taxes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I've also used it. I've used it on credit cards, but I just didn't follow through with it because it was the bankster thieves are
Yeah.
harder to deal with, and,
Right.
and they don't just roll over I just
Okay.
I didn't I
Well-
gave up on it because not
Okay.
because it wasn't working, but because again you have to build a case to follow through.
Will you speak about trust and how, in other words, if you want to operate through a trust, you don't want anything coming in your name. In other words, because you set up a trust many people, like banks, that's another thing. We talk about banking because they want, well, what's your social security number? Now, you really want to get around that, right? You don't want to necessarily use a social security connected to a trust.
Or FIN, but that's still based on
First of all,
who's backing this up. They want Social Security to back up.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't give out a social security number.
So,
period.
do you use trust for the purpose of getting a bank card, or?
If I want to open a bank account, well, I haven't opened up a bank account in a long time. I used to refuse to give a social security number. There's a friend of mine actually in Texas, Kerry, the same guy, does it. He opens bank accounts without a social security number, and he calls it a religious objection. And and what he'll do is he'll go there and they'll refuse to open it up, and he'll say, well, who's your lawyer? Can I talk to your lawyer? And he'll get the number for their legal department, and he'll send them a letter,
Right.
and tell them that, and the next thing you know, the bank is calling them up and saying, why don't you, let's make an appointment, you can come down and open your account.
Now, was this major banks or just things small?
It's major, like
Major
Chase.
Okay,
Now,
Wells Fargo.
just as
anything like
just as a little side on that, because I've done the same thing in the US, but I did it with wasn't a big bank. It was just a New Jersey
that. Okay.
bank.
PNC or something, or PCN.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other one.
Okay.
I won't mention, but
All right.
it was another bank.
Okay.
And the reason I was using that was because my wife already had an account there,
Right.
and we were trying to open up one for our son.
Mhm.
And I went through that same process, and there's a couple of forms that I have that talk about the law about not providing social security numbers, and I then also serve notice on the bank managers and on the bank itself and
Right.
the legal department that they're in breach of the law by
Right.
doing this. And a couple of days later, they refused. They said, "Oh, we'll send this up to legal and we'll come back to you." A couple of days later, I got a phone call from the vice president of the bank, and we spoke for about half an hour. And his end result was that the newish Patriot Act and all that stuff now requires them to obtain all that information, and if they don't obtain it, then they themselves are audited every year, and any accounts that are created without that social security number, they're in breach, and they get fined for, and they get seriously fined, heavy money. So he told me this, him and the board decided that it was cheaper for them to take the hits from people suing them than it was to pay the fines
Wow.
that the government levied on them.
Okay.
So that was the bank's decision not to do that.
So how you wouldn't do that?
So you have to use your social security number and then sue them.
You could just sue them anyway.
Okay.
And then technically they are in breach of the law.
Okay.
But they're still a private bank. And
Right.
part of that decision is we're still a private company,
Mhm.
we're still or a private corporation, and we can decide that we don't want to service your bank account.
That's-
So
Right. Well.
Take a
So-
business somewhere
okay.
else.
take your business somewhere else. Yeah.
Right. Right.
We don't want
So
your money.
you can try it, but depending on the bank,
How long ago was that?
18 months ago.
Okay.
I haven't tried to do anything since. I don't have any US bank accounts myself,
Right.
and the one that I have in Canada, I opened without the social insurance number.
Yeah, in Canada, it's quite easy actually.
No, yeah, it's a lot easier to do.
Right.
And I actually educated the bank manager.
So for that purpose, might
The
be
lawyer was absolute title.
it might be smart to open an account, especially if you're not too far from the border in Canada.
That would be easy actually. I mean, the only problem is the exchange rates.
Yeah, the
Because
exchange rate screws around.
every time you take money out, you know, they hit
Right.
you pretty hard on the exchange
Oh, I
rate.
do, yeah.
But it's actually, and then the question, a debit card in Canada is not Visa or MasterCard.
Oh, really?
It's just a debit card. So you can't go to a store like you can with a debit card here
Yeah.
and treat the debit card like a credit card.
Right.
And so you got to just take the cash out and then spend it. You see
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
But the advantage is that it's pretty anonymous because it's international. Once it's out of Canada, then it's there's no tracking. You know, it's pretty anonymous.
So the next best thing is basically to set up a trust and run things through the trust, even though they may ask for you as the beneficiary, as a trustee. That's what they're going to ask. They're going to want to know. I mean, it's technically, even though you're the trustee, and you might have use of, you know.
If you want to, you know, I guess it depends on how much. But even then, I've set up bank accounts for companies, and they still want a Social Security number. I've had them close accounts down that didn't have a Social Security number associated with it, even though it was a company account.
Okay.
And so, I mean, you're pretty well stuck giving out the Social Security number anyways.
To open company, I had to back it up with
Personal.
everything that's me.
Yeah. Well, and you may. It depends on the situation. Sometimes you don't have to do that. Like for example, and this is if you guys want to talk about trust and asset protection, we can do that maybe tomorrow. This one's gonna, the way this is going, we're gonna be all day on this one, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But
Who's the title holder?
a allodial title? The man. Only the man can have a allodial title.
And how did it end up in hands of state, federal, and they built bridges and roads and charges to travel down? And
What happens is because of color of title. And if you have true title, and I don't know if you've ever seen this or not, but I have. You see a road that goes along, and then it comes to somebody's land, and then it goes around the land, and then it keeps going in a straight direction.
That's what happened on Long Island when they did the Parkway. They had to go around all the estates, but then when they went through, when the 95 went through, when the Long Island Expressway went through, they got Robert Moses somehow got. He went straight through.
Again, it depends on color of title.
Okay.
Because what happens is when you use Federal Reserve notes, when the land is transferred with Federal Reserve notes, it's really not paid for, and so the government is able to get eminent domain.
Oh, okay.
And so then they can basically take the land. They have to still pay you for it, but they can take the land.
Right.
Whereas if you have that land patent, well, the land, the government sold the land. They don't have it anymore. They can't go and claim eminent domain anymore. See what I'm saying?
Well, right.
And that's why you see the land. It goes across. The road will be going down through all these people's land until it comes to somebody's land that they don't. That's got the land patent.
Yeah.
And so then they have to drive around that land, and then they continue on straight.
You know, I wonder. There was a house. It was almost a riot on Queens Boulevard. It's a major in Queens, New York, and they had all these big buildings. I mean, they had all this land, huge amount of land. This woman had this one little house on the corner with all this commercial all around it. So I'm wondering, you know, they had to offer her. Right. She did another. Eventually, they got it. Eventually she must have died or whatever. The bottom line is that wasn't a lot of land. It might have been, I don't know, 30 feet by 30 feet or something. But it was like there. It was like a riot. It was there. And yet all these other commercial, big buildings and so on, you know. So is it that person, that woman had a...
Very well could have. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, what happens is, again, it's like these people, I met some people in Arizona, and they had a patent on their land, and the patent was like, you know, like this Texas land patent, right, was issued in the 40s or 50s, something like that, okay? And so Arizona's the same thing. Like on my land, let me see if I pull that up. Oh, let's do this. This is the first one. I think it is, yeah. Yeah, yeah. This is one of the first ones I did. This is, I sent to the Bureau of Land Management in Phoenix. This is before, this was back in 2005. So the internet was around, but there wasn't much going on. You know what I mean?
Right. The United States of America, yeah.
Yeah, the United States of America.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. See?
Yeah.
Capitalized.
Well, it's upper lowercase.
So that's the proper.
That's the proper way.
style
Yeah.
of the Confederation.
But so it says here, they all start, all of these land patents, there's a base and a meridian. And every state has a base and a meridian. And in Arizona, it's called the Gila and Salt River Meridian. Okay, and so then you have southwest quarter of Section 4 and Township 6, south of Range 6 east of the Gila, and which was 160 acres. And so that was dated in 6th of December 1933. And so there's people in Arizona that had land patents back then, okay? And they had some people I knew, I met. I didn't know them that well, I met them. They were, actually, it was a lady that worked in this postal place that I had a mailbox. She worked there, and she told me that they had never been on the tax rolls, and they owned their grandfather bought this land from the government and had the patent,
Right.
and it had never been on the tax rolls. It's 160 acres, and the sons got it, and then the grandkids got it, and they just said, well, you can have these acres over here, and they just put their house on the land,
Right.
and that was it.
Yeah.
And they get a quit claim deed. But you know, again, really, at the end of the day, you know, you're living on it for more than 7 years, then
Right.
possession's 9/10 of the law, right?
Right.
And that's all that matters. And they've been passing it on in their family, never been on the tax rolls, never gotten anything from the taxing authorities.
And
You
do
see
you
what I'm
need,
saying?
And do you need to pass building codes on a house you build on it?
No, you don't.
Not, yeah, no, if you have a land patent, right. That's one way
But actually the people that have to do the building codes are the licensed contractors.
Right.
Yeah.
They're required to follow the building codes. Now, if it was me, the way I would approach it, because I'd want it built to code,
Right.
and so I would hire someone. And even if it's a general contractor, I'd tell them, look, I want it built to code, but I'm not getting a building permit.
Exactly. Right.
And then what I do is I go to the people in the building permit department and I tell them, look, I'm not getting a building permit, but I'm doing some construction and I want it built to code, and so I'm willing to pay somebody cash to come out and make sure, to check on it periodically and make sure it's built to code, and I'll pay you cash, and it'll be under the table.
Right.
I'll bet you they come up with somebody that wanted to do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so you don't have a permit, you still get it built to code, and you still have the building inspectors come out and look at it and make sure that it's okay.
Well, that's one reason. That's another reason to have the land patent basically done, because you don't have it. Someone said, "Well, you didn't get a C of O on this." Like my dad did some building, but he's always built it above and beyond what it should be.
Right.
I mean, double. One guy came up when he wants to put a foundation. You know, you could build 2 or 3 stories here with this. He only want 1. Well, that's my dad. Always overkill. Always the better. Always the top stuff. Always sacrifice with the best end.
Yeah, it's
So-
better. I like the idea of the building code's not a bad idea.
No,
I just
it's
don't
just-
like somebody telling me that I have to
Exactly, because there are some people who do shoddy work and they just don't do it right.
do it. Right.
That's what these unions. But the unions, that's another thing. They went 100 years ago. We don't. Not in this country. Maybe in India or somewhere. In China, they need unions, right? Because where they treat people and all. But bottom line, you wouldn't have that issue with the land patent. Once you do that, you don't need this CFO. You don't, because you don't need their permission. That you own that. It's yours.
Right.
You're not paying any property taxes.
Right.
Right. But then they use these other words. They send these things around. They want to know, are you a resident? Right.
Yeah.
A resident.
Yeah.
Well, there's another way to get people in, right? Or I heard if you have a if you have your address on the this is how a cop can, or you tell me if this is true or not. Police or sheriffs can come on your land if you have an actual address. 123 Main Street.
Right.
If
You're in the jurisdiction.
But if you've taken that down, you don't have a mailbox
Right.
out, you don't have a doorbell on the
Right.
property,
Right.
and you don't put an American flag flying. Someone told me there's another way they come in. If you got a war flag flying, my dad always flew it. He didn't know that. He put a huge flag,
Yeah.
But that I understand is another way for them to come on. And then if you put a chain out, like I have a chain on my.
Well, I just put
Private
no
property.
trespassing signs up.
That's what I put. No
That's the simplest
trespassing.
thing, just put no trespassing.
No
signs
trespassing.
up.
Keep out private property.
Right. See, even this one, this land patent is certified.
Right.
Right here is the certification.
Okay.
It says Bureau of Land Management, Arizona State Office. Right? It's
Okay.
not State of Arizona. It's Arizona State.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
Right? And so there's a difference.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But if you also look, says here, granted by the United States unto said claimant the tract of land above described to have and to hold said tract, the appurtenances thereof unto the said claimant, to the heirs and assigns of the said claimant forever, subject to any something and accrued water rights for mining, agricultural, manufacturing, other purposes, and rights to, I guess, ditches and reservoirs in the connection to such water rights as may be recognized and acknowledged by the local customs, laws, and something of courts. There is reserved from the lands thereby granted by way thereon for ditches or canals constructed by the authority of the United States. So again, that's the reservations. But other than that, if that's doesn't say anything about property taxes, doesn't say anything about any deed restrictions or zoning requirements or any of that stuff.
Right.
And that's as good as you're going to get it, like in that part of Arizona at least. You know what I mean?
Right.
And a lot of the land patents, like you saw the Texas one, all it says is reserving mineral rights. That's it. Nothing else.
Yeah.
And the older ones, like if you look at this one here, there'll be nothing that's reserved. It's all legal description, is what this is.
So how much less should you technically, if it's worth X, say $100,000 of property, but the former owner wants to reserve the rights as opposed to him offering you total mineral rights? Basically, is there a, obviously he might want to try to sell for what everything else in the area is going for, but that would normally include the mineral rights. So
A lot of times the mineral rights, whether they're reserved by you or by the previous owner, a lot of times they're reserved. Now,
Okay.
now if you bring forward all the rights on the deed, the mineral rights will be reserved. If you bring forward all the rights and privileges of the land patent, you could technically take the mineral rights because the land patent doesn't say anything about mineral rights. See what I'm saying?
yeah,
So what happens is, say somebody bought it from the patentee, and maybe they reserved mineral rights when they sold it again. See what I'm saying?
yeah,
And you see that quite a bit. But you could essentially, because again, what was exchanged? Federal Reserve notes were exchanged. So it really wasn't paid for. It was
Okay.
only
Wow.
discharged with limited liability.
That's
So then you could actually take the mineral rights by bringing forward all the rights and privileges of the land patent.
okay.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because the land patent doesn't reserve mineral rights.
Especially if you buy it with silver and gold.
It depends, exactly, because
Yeah.
then it's really paid for too.
That's the way to do it. Yeah.
And when you have the land patent, then you have the land up into space for infinity and to the center of the earth.
Yeah.
see what I'm saying?
Right.
And so, everything, that's the land patent.
That's pretty
what
powerful.
comes with it, that's right.
So it would be no issue out west then as far as drilling well. If you wanted to drill wells for water or whatever, technically you could.
Yeah, nobody's gonna stop you from drilling wells for water.
No, but
It's
if you had
drilling wells for oil.
Oh, for oil, right? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Right.
But if it's a big piece of land, you know, if it's 400,000 acres, I don't think anybody's gonna say anything, you know.
But if your
But
land,
if you got
right.
if you got a place like this,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden you decide, well, you're going to tear this house down and put an oil well here, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then the neighbors might complain.
Right. Well, that's true. You'd have an issue with that. So.
Yeah.
So with the land patent, are you saying you have to find out, like in the Pennsylvania William Penn example, you have to find who is that, or is it something you like a title search thing to do that? No.
It depends, you know, like especially in the Northeast where the records are really old, they're really hard to find sometimes. And like Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania.
Right.
What I would do, quite frankly, if I was in Pennsylvania, you know, everybody knows that William Penn was granted Pennsylvania, and so I would just get a copy of that patent. Now it's got to be somewhere, and the key is just to find it, you know.
I think New York is King James. I think
Could
No?
be, you know, I don't know.
because those are 13.
Well, he was originally to Rensselaer, is the one, which is the name of a city right outside of Albany, Rensselaer. But Rensselaer, I think, got the original land patent for this country, actually, for New York and whatever else. But yeah, so.
So if you could get anything like that showing that it was granted by somebody, whether it's the king or whether it's the state of New York, whoever, you see what I'm saying?
So and that would be the land patent.
Then that would be the land patent. Yeah.
But you have to, like, there's a fellow named Gibson out, Ron Gibson, I've ever heard of him. He's out in Oregon. He says you've got to go back to the original one, but you've got to basically go back and you've got to, like, you have to get all the ones from
You can
now
do
all the way
that.
back.
That's called chain of title.
Chain
You
of
can
title.
do that if you want.
Yeah, but
That's a lot of work. But
you
can
may not be
that
able
if
to
you
do it.
want.
Maybe a break in the chain,
Huh?
right? There could be a break in the chain, or you can't find them.
Mike. I mean, usually all that stuff is in the county records.
Yeah, but I went back to 1865, and that wasn't far enough. I had to go back to 17 something because that's when the original patent was. And they wouldn't even let you in that room. I mean, they said the
Right.
woman was the old
So
woman.
in that case, then that's when I would just look on the wall if they got something on the wall showing that, you know, whatever was granted to whoever. If you do, again, it comes down to due diligence, right?
Right.
If you did everything you could do, and the best you could come up with is this, then I'd say take the ball and run with it. You know, that's what I
Right.
would do.
And I think it also comes down to redoing the title so that
I
you
mean,
take.
the bottom line is you're physically on it now.
Right, right.
See what I'm saying?
That's correct.
And so it's not like you're trying to take somebody's land that
Right.
that you're on.
Right, exactly.
And you're physically on it. You have a color of title.
Mhm.
You're just trying to prove your absolute title.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
And especially if you do the meets and bounds over, you have, you know, and that's,
Sure.
you maybe
Yeah.
put the survey goes down and just put whatever in the ground there type of thing. And then don't put the address on there. You might, someone I heard said.
Well, you
name
don't.
it-
On the land patent, it never has an address. The address is something the city gives you.
Right, but you shouldn't put like Jack's Alley or something like that.
I wouldn't put that.
Just put the location with meets and bounds, basically.
I would, if I put the city address, I just put it down also known as
Also known as.
123 Main Street or something.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And on the land, and I'd specify on the land of whatever county. Okay, I'm not sure that I'd even say what city, but if I did, it'd be on the land of the city,
Right.
unincorporated. You see
Okay.
what I'm saying?
Right, because when they send out these bills for property tax, is it basically the real estate? In other words, if you have a building, a house.
There's a legal description they use, and I think that's how they tie you in there, is because they're using that legal description, that property tax number.
Okay.
And that kind of stuff.
Well, the
I think
fact-
that's how they're tying you in.
Yeah, but
But-
they're not tying you into the meets and bounds because the lot description and
Yeah,
the
no, that's
tax
separate.
description are not the same.
No, that's right.
So they're not actually taxing you for your land.
But are they taxing you for
This
the?
is one of the things that
They're
I looked
taxing you
into.
for the privilege.
No. Are they taxing you for the building that's on the land, though? That's my question. If you have a
No.
house,
No,
That-
not even that, because it's a description of the lot,
right? So
and you're paying property tax on that
Land,
lot, but it's
real
different.
property.
okay,
The tax description,
right.
if you look at it, and the actual deed description don't match. They're not
We're
the
going to
same.
go through that.
Okay.
We're going to go through that.
Okay, because they do.
Land is the land and everything attached to the land.
No, but what I mean is property taxes. If you have technically, if you have a building, it's one thing. If it's for storage, cold storage, no utilities on it. Then you got another guy who's got same type building, but he's got it. He's running a manufacturing process. There's a lot of dollars being generated. Da da da. My question is that where there's a difference in taxes? In other words, one building might be taxed 1,000, the other one 10,000.
What difference does it matter?
Does he
If you're
live
not-
in that building where he makes a lot of money off of
Yeah.
manufacturing?
'Cause he-
Then he's entitled to a lot of breaks.
So you're saying it shouldn't have anything to do with the fact that it's a building for storage,
Either-
no one in it, or it's
Either you own the land or you don't.
right.
Okay? If you really own the land, then you can do anything you want with the land.
No, but I'm
you
saying-
can dispose of it.
Right.
You can do anything you want. And
Okay.
whether you use it to make $1 billion or whether you just sleep on it, who
Okay.
cares? It's nobody's business but your own.
Well, my question is this: if you
Tax
have a building or
assessor.
taxes, for instance, that's why, for instance, we're in Long Island or other places. If you improve the property, right? Oh, now
Whatever. It still doesn't
But they
matter.
charge you more taxes. What I'm saying, they charge you more tax.
Well, if you're in that system, then you're a slave, and then
Okay.
they make it up as they go along.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, that's what. All right. So bottom line is,
Anthony, most likely, the word land and improvements on the tax assessor
Right.
is in all capital letters, which goes to the slave system.
okay.
It's all-
I bet you if you go back a while, Glenn, the word land and improvements would be proper, upper and
If
lower
it's
case.
all territorial, I can tell you. All taxes started. There was an act of Congress in 1862 and one in 1863. One of them was for sales tax and the other one was for real estate taxes.
Okay.
But it's all tied to that act of Congress. And so again, and it's for imports. It's territorial. So the question is, do you live in the territory or you live in the sovereign state?
So once you really technically, once you are either a American state national or you're a sovereign, foreign sovereign. No, technically, how do you get off? Well, you buy a car.
Well, the way I do it is I transfer it, and then I pay gold or silver coin,
We're trying to
and
break it.
and I'll show you
In
what
the
I
day
do.
what they
Well,
put
it says
in
no
the-
taxes
in
on
the
it
period
because you
of
technically
100
should be
years.
paying,
Oh, I know.
8 to 10% tax.
Taxes is for territorials.
Right.
Okay, so if you're in the
Taxes
DC
is for
territory,
territorial.
that's right.
That's good.
Okay.
After the American Revolution, lands in this state became allodial, subject to no tenure or any to any services incident thereto. Allodial means absolute title. Means that you really own the land. If you're paying taxes,
Right.
then you don't own the land. Because think about it. What do? They do a unlawful detainer action. And an unlawful detainer action is an action for renters. You're paying an annual rent. From what source does the title to the land derive from a government spring? In arbitrary governments from the supreme head, be he the emperor, king, or potentate, or by whatever name he is known. In a republic, from the law making or authorizing to be made the grant or sale. In the first case, the party looks alone to his letters patent. In the second, to the law and the evidence of the acts necessary to be done under the law. To a perfection of his grant, donation, or purchase, the law alone must be the fountain from whence the authority is drawn, and there can be no other source. Land patent is a minument of title, such title being absolute in its nature, making the sovereigns absolute freeholders on their lands. Finally, the patent is the only evidence of legal fee simple title. This is an act to increase revenue from imports to pay interest on the public debt and for other purposes. 1861, 12 Stat 292. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States and Congress assembled. And this Section 8. Be it further enacted that a direct tax of $20 million to be and is hereby annually laid upon the United States, and the same shall be and is hereby apportioned to the states, so this is by apportionment, respectively in the manner following. And then Section 9, that's Section 8, Section 9, that be it fact that from the purpose of assessing the above tax and collecting the same, the President of the United States shall be, and he is hereby authorized to divide respectively, the state and territories, the United States, and the District of Columbia in convenient collection districts, to nominate by and with the advice of the Senate to appoint an assessor and collector. Gee, who do you deal with? The tax assessor collector. And for each such district who shall be freeholders and residents within the same. Section 10. And be it further enacted that before any collector shall enter into the duties of his office, he shall execute a bond. They have to be bonded. And for such amount as shall be prescribed by the Secretary of Treasury, with sureties to be approved as sufficient by the Solicitor of the Treasury, containing a condition that said collector shall justly and faithfully account for to the United States and pay over. So again, that's Section 10. Section 13. And be it further enacted, the said direct tax laid by this act shall be assessed and laid on the value of all lands and lots of ground with their improvements and dwelling houses, which several articles subject to taxation shall be enumerated in value by the respective assessors at the rate each of them is worth in money on the first day of April 1862. So this is when it all got started. Section 14, be it further enacted that the respective assistant assessors shall immediately after being required as aforesaid by the assessor proceed through every part of their respective district and shall require all persons, are you a person? No. Owning, possessing, or having the care or management of any lands, lots of ground, buildings, or dwelling houses, lying and being within the collection district where they reside, and liable to the direct taxes aforesaid, to deliver written lists of the same, which lists shall be made in such manner as may be directed by the assessor, and as far as practical, conformably to those which may be required for the same purpose under the authority of the respective states.
Which may be, and I'm not a person.
There you go.
Yeah.
And 29, that as soon as the Board of Assessors, don't you have a Board of Assessors? I guarantee you have a Board of Assessors.
Yep.
Shall have completed the adjustment and equalization. There's a Board of Equalization. Anyways, of the valuations aforesaid, they shall proceed to apportion to each county and state district its proper quota of direct tax, and the said Board of Assessors shall, within 20 days after the time appointed by the Secretary of the Treasury for their first meeting, complete the said apportionment, and shall record the same, and they shall thereupon further delivery to each assessor a certificate of such apportionment. Section 43. And be it further enacted that each and every collector is deputy who shall exercise or be guilty of any extortion or oppression under color of this act. Gee, that sounds like extortion and oppression. Under color, this is the beginning of 18 U.S.C. 241. Whoever violates your rights under the color of law, right? So
Wear a mask, yeah.
Yeah, really. Or who shall demand other or greater sums than shall be authorized by this act shall be liable to a sum not exceeding $2,000 to be recovered by for the use of the party injured with costs of suit in any court having competent jurisdiction, and each and every collector or his deputy shall give receipts for all sums by them collected and retained in pursuance of this act. Section 48. This is all of this same act. The same act goes on for a long ways.
Wow.
Who should be getting the receipts? Because I don't believe when we pay taxes right now, we just send in the receipts connected to a statement or a demand.
So you got the statement.
That's
You
not
didn't get a true
receipt.
bill. You really want a true bill.
Yeah, yeah. Signed.
Right.
And be it further enacted that there shall be allowed to the collectors appointed under this act in full compensation for their services and that of their deputies in carrying into this act into effect a commission of 4%. They get a commission of whatever they collect.
Yeah.